Howdy, welcome to the Genesis. I'm Rabbi Josh. My guest this week is Yankl Falk. We've been on a bit of a tear interviewing the musicians, Michelle Alany, and then Yair Dalal, and now Yankl Falk, who is a fabulous klezmer musician and a wonderful person. If you live in Portland, Oregon, you may have heard Yankl Falk playing around the city with his fabulous band. We talk about not just klezmer, we talk about growing up Jewish and growing up in a particular kind of Jewish world. We talk about Yiddish and Yiddish culture. And then, of course, we talk about music. And one of the things that's wonderful is that Yankl is one of those artists who was an important part of creating a scene that he now inhabits, and that is the klezmer music scene in Portland, Oregon, which turns out to be an important part in some ways of the klezmer revival that went far beyond Portland. So we talk about all of that, and you will enjoy this conversation, I think, with the wonderful Yankl Falk. And make sure to go to the show notes so you can find out more about him and his great band and where you can catch them playing around Portland. Yankl Falk will be part of the Portland Jewish Music Festival, which is hosted by the East Side Jewish Commons and co-sponsored by Art Lab, along with several different Jewish organizations. So that should be on your radar, and this excellent musician and excellent person should be on your radar. Enjoy the conversation. Yankl Falk, welcome to the Genesis podcast.
Well, good to see you again.
Start with this question, because we were just talking about your two names. You're Jack and you're Yankl. Who are you really?
Yes. Yes, both. At the workplace, all my life, Jack, because that's what it says on my diplomas. And as I was mentioning, I've got a little bit of laryngitis when I speak. So Jack in certain communities, Yankl in certain communities. My mom always called me Yankl. Actually, it's a Galicianer pronunciation, but Yankl. And that's how I was always known by chunks of my family. In fact, my dad rarely called me that. His brothers always did. They call me Yankl. So
it's such a Jewish story. It's such a Jewish story to have this, beautiful Yiddish name, but then for public consumption in certain circles, you're Jack.
Yeah, it's really weird too, because some of the publicity when I do any musical stuff, it's Yankl Falk and the Carpathian Pacific Express, or it's Yankl Falk with a number of groups that I've been with.
So. But let me ask you a little bit before we get to your music. Just tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Not everybody has a Yiddish moniker that they can schlep around with them and in such a beautiful way. So, how did you grow up, and how much of Yiddish was part of your upbringing?
Well, very much, actually. I grew up in Connecticut in a small town. Actually, it was not that small, Norwalk, actually South Norwalk, which does make a difference. But it's about an hour up the line from New York City. And I grew up there. Most of my family actually came from Europe and landed in Norwalk. There were a bunch. I mean, there's an interesting story behind that, too.
By the way, when one thinks of Yiddish-speaking communities, you do not immediately think of Connecticut.
Not at all. The family was originally from Galicia, Galicia.
Yeah.
My grandparents were first cousins, I should say there. So I was 7 years old before I met somebody whose last name was not Schnabel. And the family came over in fits and spurts over a period where I think my grandmother was one of 14 or 15, depending on how you enumerate. But, the first two died in either in childbirth or with young children. I'm not quite sure, but the third wife stayed alive long enough to have 12 kids of her own.
Wow.
My grandmother was one of them.
Wow, I see.
Yeah, and so they kept coming over, and the last batch of them, the great-grandparents and the 5 youngest siblings left Bremen or Hamburg when war broke out between Germany and the rest of Europe. They were in the middle of the Atlantic.
Wow.
They arrived in Philadelphia on August 5th. I just found this out 3 years ago.
I was going to say very, very good timing.
Yeah, and it took me a while to process that information because it's, I thought, what does that tell me? My Kamash Malone, what do we learn from this? And what it really is, you don't necessarily get a second chance. These uncles these cousins that I grew up with, I never would have met them if that boat had left. If they had left Europe a week or two later, if they had gone to the dock a week or two later, if they didn't get on that ship, that's probably one branch of the family that I never would have known.
We're so shaped. Our very existence is shaped by facts and events that precede us by many, many centuries. And if not for this or that, Yankl Falk wouldn't be here.
Well, I certainly wouldn't be the person I am because I did grow up surrounded by that family. And my grandfather was pretty much this. He was a very seminal influence in raising me. So I had a very, very close bond with him growing up. Taught me my first Yiddish songs. The first one actually was called Yankl Dalal, a Yankl who works in the shop. It was this cute little theater song that I've never been able to track down anything about it.
That's so great.
So anyway, that was where this began.
Now, hold on. Did you speak Yiddish growing up?
No, I heard it every day in my home, pretty much. My mom and her dad spoke Yiddish one to the other. And so my ears were there long before my voice box caught up. I didn't really know the language. I didn't know it at all, in fact, but I knew the feeling of the language. And so that's the world that I grew up in, that synagogue. My other cousins, they were conservative Jewish families, and they were Americans.
Yeah.
Those synagogues, the conservative Reform synagogues in the 1950s and 60s, that was American Jewish life. Our world was European Jewish life.
So you grew up with a familiarity with and an affection for Yiddish and Yiddish culture and Yiddish music. When did you become serious about klezmer music and about your own playing as a musician?
Well, that's a two-step or multi-step process. The first, I grew up, we had Mickey Katz records in the house. We had Barry Sisters, which had Dave Tarras, the clarinet, on those albums. There were others, but that was, Murray Lehrer, Paul Pincus, mid-century American Jewish dance music. Not just dance, but it was around the 1950s where the first wave or the giant wave of klezmer music dissipated. There was no longer a popular demand. It was the post-war generation stopped buying albums. The post-war generation stopped speaking Yiddish, and there was no influx of immigrants because they had already either emigrated or been killed. This constant influx of an audience. You still had some Hasidic recordings being issued by smaller record companies, but nothing in terms of a large audience, popular releases in the record stores. It was confined to Jewish audiences pretty much. It's kind of funny to think about a time when Jewish music was not confined to Jewish audiences, but there was, within the 1950s, and Don Byron, just a monstrously talented clarinetist with whom I've had the pleasure of working with, privilege.
Wow.
But Don has talked about this. He's written about it too. The sense of ethnic music in the 50s as a stand-in for the, is ethnic flavored American music as a stand-in for the authentic, truly ethnic music, whether it's Italian or Jewish, what have you. There was, on KBOO here in Portland, there's a radio show that was called Folk Motif. And it was Eastern European music, Eastern European folk music, like Croatian children's choirs and things like that. And the guy who was running that show was a Brooklyn Jew named Misha Creditor, who I got to meet through a friend. And one day I turned to him, I said, "Misha, you're always playing all this stuff. You never play anything Jewish." He says, "You want to play Jewish? Bring some records. Sit down here and play some records." And I took the invitation. It was
So
whether it was an
great.
invitation or a taunt, I don't know. So, and that's actually the origin of the Yiddish Hour program, which ran under that name for 30 years. We did it. My wife Reva and I did the Yiddish Hour on KBOO for 30 years. And about a year and a half in, you had mentioned early, Eli earlier in the show, my son Eli. So Reva was pregnant with our second child. And I thought, well, I remember this Mickey Katz album, Music for Wedding, Bar Mitzvahs, and Brisses. I thought, well, maybe we should have a band. Yeah, when the baby's born, maybe we should have a band or something. Maybe we need a klezmer band in Portland. So Barbara Bernstein, who was a violist, who was a KBOO host, may still be one and somehow we wound up connecting with Joel Rubin, who has become at the upper level, the upper echelon of klezmer clarinetists in the world. But I got to know Joel a little bit, and that band didn't come together right then and there. But after Eli was born, he was on the planet for a while. Barbara and Joel did form the Hester Street Klezmer Band in town, which was the first band of the klezmer revival, or the klezmer revival band here in the late 70s and early 80s.
But wait, let me stop you and go back a little bit. So, but when did what era, what phase, what years did you become interested in klezmer? Not even necessarily playing. Was it in the 50s or was
No,
it?
No. This was it. Because also there was a band that was formed by a Portlander who I got to mention, Lev Liberman, who lives about 10 minutes from my house. And at the time was living in Berkeley, and he had been collecting records and working with a professor named Marty Schwartz to try to understand the klezmer repertoire. Lev did the spade work along with a couple of people who later became his bandmates in the Klezmorim, which was the first band of the klezmer revival. It was the first one out there, 1974 or so.
Got it.
Flash forward a few years, Lev comes to Neve Shalom, his home congregation, to put on a concert with the Klezmorim. Reva and I go to that. I wound up buying 5 copies, I think, of their first album, East Side Wedding, I think was the first album. So I bought 5 copies of that record, passed them along to my brother and some other people. Listened to that, and that kind of was the fish hook in my upper palate.
So Portland plays a not irrelevant role in in the American klezmer revival.
Yeah, and that's ironic too. Our radio show that we did was one of the first shows that did feature klezmer on a regular basis, klezmer and Yiddish music. There wasn't much on the radio around the country at that time, and we just started it, from there and from there on and on and on.
Absolutely fascinating. I did not know that Portland woven into the beginnings of the klezmer revival in the 70s so much. But one thing I wanted to note is it's really interesting because it sounds like you along with many people were beginning to get interested in klezmer and probably in the late 60s and early 70s. And that kind of tracks with you were a little bit later.
No. You see, I didn't have any awareness of it till mid-late 70s.
Okay. So I guess what I'm just wondering about is how and whether it tracks with the kind of folk revival that was such an important part of American music in the second half of the 20th century. I'm just thinking of people rediscovering bluegrass and blues and all that stuff. I suspect in some broader way it is connected culturally to people rediscovering roots music of various forms.
Yeah, there was American folk music and bluegrass and American traditional music, fiddle tunes. So you have guys like Henry Zaposnik, Andy Statman as a mandolinist, not as a clarinetist, but part of these, there was, I don't remember the names of their old-time bands that they played in, but, Andy, has a long history playing with David Grisman.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that goes back together. So there was that thread of it, so the Americana, early Americana, old-time music. There was also Balkan music, which is much closer, I think, to klezmer in terms of, stylistically and traditionally. I mean, you got Kolomekas on both sides of the world. But you've got, people, Lev came out of Balkan music, Lev and David Skuse from the Klezmorim, and Michael Alpert, one of the leading Yiddish singers. He's, I think, a National Heritage Fellow and a good friend. But you've got a number of people that come out of that Balkan scene. I never went to Yugoslavia, and I never listened to any of that music, except when I was introduced by Misha Creditor on cable with Folk Motif program. So that's not my traditions, and yet there are a lot of people that come to it that way.
What I'm curious about is like what was in the air, such that kids in San Francisco, and now I'm going back, a decade earlier or more than when you kind of got into klezmer, but in the late 50s and early 60s, you have like the Jerry Garcias of the world, just obsessed with banjo music, hillbilly music, folk music. And I'm wondering what, so now I'm asking about whether this was relevant to your experience. It seems that there was this moment in the 20th century where folks didn't find what they were looking for in mainstream culture, and so they're turning back to these older forms. I was wondering if is that what was going on for you? Were you seeking some connection, or you just happened upon it and liked it? Was it that simple?
Well, I recognized it as music that was congruent with what was in my folks' record collection. That part I knew. But what I was really drawn to was the sounds of the generation that I grew up in Shul, davening with. Those Jews. Not the American Jews, not American Jewish music, not campfire music. I mean, I had that at summer camp a couple of years. But no, it was music, Yiddish songs that, that felt personal to me. It felt something I felt closer to.
That's really, yeah, that's beautiful. So there was a continuity for you. It was like going back home in a sense.
I guess, yeah, I guess. I mean, I felt immediately that, when I heard the klezmorim and Neve Sholem that evening, I felt, bingo, here we are.
Really?
Yeah.
And say more about that, meaning here we are, meaning this is what I want.
Yeah, this is what I want to hear. And I didn't at the time think of myself going that way to sing, and, certainly not to play clarinet, although, yeah, I grew up playing clarinet, and I was away from it for a while, and I had, that side excursion on the alto sax. I still have my alto sax, and I would love to be able to spend the time developing an embouchure for it, but the verdict is out whether there's a long enough time in my life ahead to learn how to play alto sax decently. But I had started playing clarinet again. I borrowed a horn from a friend here in Portland after we moved here over 50 years ago. Played in a chamber music ensemble that was organized through the Portland Park Bureau. It was just, like a neighborhood amateur chamber music group. I don't know that such things exist these days, but what a wonderful opening it was for me.
So great, yeah.
Yeah. So, and, I played, and the funny thing is I did play sax some at Portland Community College and Mount Hood Community College. I played in the stage bands, the jazz bands there.
And what were you playing before you discovered klezmer? What were you listening to? I don't mean discovered klezmer, you were aware of it, but before you came back to it in the mid-'70s, what kind of music were you listening to, and what kind of music were you playing?
There was a club down on Lower Burnside called Squirrel's National Lunch, and it was I don't know what's there now. It was on the 200 block of West Burnside, and there was a woman named Mother Light, Rachel Light, who was a very, very large woman, played piano magnificently, and was one of the more generous people that I have ever met, musically generous and personally kind. She was a pianist that held court there, and the door was open. Come in, bring your horn. And it was like music lessons to play with her. I didn't spend enough time there. It would have been nice to have had a deeper relationship, musical relationship with her. But I did have the invitation to come in, play some music with me. And then so I was interested in blues. I mean, really, I was interested. I had listened to a significant number of hours and days when I just immersed listening. Am I a blues musician? No. I mean, I can't claim that. But I listened a lot. And in fact, I think my singing style these days, it's sort of this, it's got some of the echoes of having been around blues music so much that
Yeah.
I've got a little bit different approach to singing Yiddish than
Were there particular blues artists that you remember liking or trying to imitate?
oh God, I wouldn't dare imitate, but quite frankly, listening to Howlin' Wolf
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
it's there's nothing better. There's
Hard to beat that.
yeah, yeah.
A little bit of Howlin' Wolf and your Howlin' Yankl in your voice there. You know,
It was felt natural, but it was, yeah. There were people who opened the door, and it wasn't just Mother Light. There were clubs around town where I would drag my saxophone in, and it was like open to all comers. Jam sessions. And so, if you could play, your basic pentatonic riffs and not sound too horrible, they wouldn't throw you off the stage. But in terms of playing klezmer, what happened for me, I think, was when I got to be friends with Joel Rubin, and he invited me to come over to the house, and we would listen to stuff that he'd copied onto cassette. We would just listen. We'd have long listening sessions. In fact, for me, those have been some of the most valuable opportunities for me, is to sit and listen. It's something I do miss at this stage, because it's a very rare thing, even to sit by myself and listen, but to have this social listening.
Yeah, it's a lost art.
Oh yeah, there was. I mean, with vinyl, back in the '70s, we'd listen to jazz albums forever in the evenings. You drink, you smoke, what have you, and listen to music together. And that doesn't happen for me at all. But there was a period too, about 25, 30 years ago, when I met Lev Liberman here in town. We would sit and listen to stuff. We would have listening sessions that would, go on for a very long time. And it's great to share your past passions for what you hear. It's kind of like the dialogue we're having now, but with music playing.
Yeah. No, I love it. I was just talking with somebody else about this, but being able to talk about a particular line or note or whatever with somebody else who also loves music is just such a beautiful feeling.
We get that a little bit now, with the band that I've been playing with for the last 8+ years,
Yeah, so
Carpathian Pacific Express.
Let's talk about those guys.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. I mean, I'm lucky. I mean, it's the first time I think and when I'm getting together with these guys, for one, there's just lots and lots of. I mean, it's like being in the green room before the gig, before the rehearsal. So we'll visit for an hour or longer beforehand, before anybody unpacks a horn and starts playing any notes at all. So there's a lot of conversation. It's, again, it's shared listening. Sometimes somebody will bring something up and we'll listen to, it's faster to just play something than to try to describe what you're really thinking of. So there's a lot of cross-pollination in ways that I've never really experienced at this level.
Cool.
Yeah, it's great. The guys that I'm working with, Courtney Vondrelli, who is best known for his work with Three Leg Torso, but he seems to be, since Three Leg went on hiatus, Courtney has branched out in a lot of different directions, and he plays tenor sax and accordion, among other things. I mean, we've actually played some stuff where he was playing guitar quite well. I think that's his first instrument. But Courtney and I go back, 25, 30 years here in town. In fact, he played with Hester Street soon after I left. So, we shared those roots going back. Keyboard player Ralph Huntley, and again, I go back with Ralph a good 25 years as well. And we're looking at traveling with our wives to Italy later this year.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.
So sorry, tell me the other musicians, and then I want to know how the name came about, and then I want you to take us inside of klezmer music a little bit.
Okay, so Ralph on the keys, Andrew Ehrlich on violin, and Andrew and I, we've known each other and played together. We all go back really long periods. I mean, we've got a great shared identity here musically, and Jai Tanzer on the drums, and I don't remember whether, I think I met Jai. He has some memory of it, but when he was in high school here, his dad, Rusty, was working alongside Moshe Wilhelm to try to organize musical things down in Courthouse Square.
So tell me about the name, and then I have some questions about the music.
Okay, Carpathian Pacific Express. Carpathian because it's music that's where the roots are from, Poland, Ukraine, Romania, Hungary, that mountain range. Pacific because we're living out here in Oregon in the 21st century. Express because it's faster than the local.
And tell me, what is it that what is it that you love about klezmer music? What itch does it scratch that you don't get from other kinds of music?
Well, it's funny. How do I really answer that? Because what we play is not it's not academy klezmer. It's really quite far separated from the traditional roots of the music. It's our own stamp. We, in fact, we try, if something falls into the repertoire, we try to pull it back until we've figured out how to embellish it with our own interpretation.
Right.
But what do I like? What do I like about klezmer? Well, there's all of this standard answers which aren't true. For me, it's not an ethnic identity thing, because the fact is there's some very, very good people that are not Ashkenazic that play this music really, really well. And there are also a lot of Ashkenazic people that can't play it worth a damn either. And, I'll leave it to others to figure out where I fall on that continuum. But it's like any music. If you play it right, it's got a feeling that embraces you. If you lock into it emotion, I don't know, these are extremely hard things to talk about because it's really easy to misrepresent what you're thinking.
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, what is it that you want to ask it again, and I'll see if I can.
Okay. That's okay. Yeah, and maybe it's something that can't be properly answered. I just asked you, what is it that you find in klezmer music or klezmer playing that is uniquely powerful? Like, why do you love it? Why do you love it so much? And it sounds like it's a feeling. It's a So take me inside the music a little bit. Is it what's the role of improvisation within klezmer?
Well, for one, there's the aspect of the doina. If we start with the doina, and I've heard a number of klezmer teachers who say basically doina is the center of it all. Doina being shepherd melodies. Doina, well, the doina originally comes from the shepherd flute. Somebody standing out there, you've got all day long in the field, and you can't carry anything bigger than one of these little wooden flutes. And you'll hear this in a lot of Hungarian and Romanian music, in particular, Ukrainian as well. People playing, it's modal music. It's not, you're not playing the changes like you do in jazz. It's staying in one mode, and I translate mode a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I know what a mode is, but
why don't you?
Won't.
Okay. How do you explain mode?
I'm going to defer to you because you're the better you're the better musician. I mean, I think of a mode as being it's related to the major scale, but I just think of it as a scale.
It's a scale, basically, and you've got them certainly in cantorial music. That's really, a lot of this comes out of cantorial music. If you walk into a traditional synagogue with a traditional cantor, which, you rarely get to hear that anywhere, in this town certainly, but I don't know anywhere where, I mean, we've had cantors in town that have brought us traditional Eastern European modal Jewish music. Don't hear it that much anymore. I mean, part of it is the art of the cantor. I was going to say that it's pretty much fallen to the side, but that's not true either, because Frank London's been working with some of the New York cantors, some of the Brooklyn cantors, some of the Hasidic cantors in New York. And, Frank from the Klezmotics and other groups has been recording and also recording with cantors there who are practitioners in the old style. It
Well,
was
maybe,
a very popular art form in the mid 20th century. Was, I think, the height of artistic cantorial music. Go
yeah,
ahead,
I mean, this,
please.
this has echoes. What I'm about to say has echoes of what we were saying earlier about how klezmer became something that even non-Jewish artists would listen to and perform in. What I think would surprise a lot of people is that there were cantors who would record albums, and people who knew nothing about Judaism would buy these albums or flock to come hear these cantors who probably, much to their own astonishment, became celebrities in their day. So that's an interesting thing. I don't know enough about the traditions either of cantorial music or of klezmer to know that there is a musical connection. So just to slow us down for a minute, when one says it is a modal music, does as opposed to what?
As opposed to folk music show tunes, I don't know. It's that you don't have the harmonies that
Okay.
you find, and in fact, if you look at modal music, the nusa, as we say in Jewish music, it's you've got this in Arabic music with maqam, and in
Yes.
fact, in the Sephardic world, also maqam. And anything that comes out of the Ottoman world, whether it's Turkish or Arabic,
Yes.
Sephardic, it's around a maqam, which is a mode. It's just another. That's the Arabic term for mode,
So I love
pretty
this.
much. And I hope I'm not misspeaking, but I think that's pretty much my understanding of it.
I love this so much. Last week on the podcast, I had Yair Dalal. I don't know if you know that name.
I
Um,
heard Yair a couple of times earlier here in town.
yes, and he'll be coming to Portland for the Jewish Music Festival again. But he said exactly what you just said when he was talking about. And so, if folks have not heard that episode, please go back and listen, because when he was talking about the makam, he said exactly what you said, which is that he didn't use the word mode, I don't think, but he said it's the focus is on the melody and there's not harmony, and that's essentially what
Yep.
you just said. Okay, so that really helps me.
We tend to use a lot of improvisation. I mean, people are coming from you know, jazz backgrounds, and it's why not? If you can improvise, and if you can do it well, why not? I mean, there's improvisation as long as it doesn't subvert the actual tune, as long as it supports it and doesn't subvert it. If you're playing klezmer traditionally, I should say traditionally, what you're going to wind up doing, you'll throw in the notes that are on that scale. You'll improvise, to some degree, but it's not radical improvisation. If you're playing traditionally, if you happen to be playing, like Jai, our drummer Jai Tanzer, gave us the tag neo klezmer and beyond, which
Right.
sort of defines our approach to the music. So, and it's what was it a thoroughly considered term? No, it's just one that
Yeah,
works for us.
I get it.
And so, yeah, do we play it? We don't play it the way our grandparents would have played it, or great grandparents, or what have you, but we play it as we hear it. And I think a lot of that goes back, the way I sing as well. No, I'm not singing it, in a lowercase c Catholic approach to it.
I this
Although Connie Francis did sing it in an uppercase c Catholic approach to Yiddish music.
but this is of so much interest to me and to this podcast. The I was going to ask you, and I think you've essentially answered it. I was going to ask you, if one of the great artists of the 1930s or 40s or whatever could forward in time and hear the Carpathian Pacific Express play, what would they recognize and what would they not recognize? And interesting to me about that, and the reason I think that uh, the question itself is more important than the answer is that I think in some ways it's talking about that is also a way of talking about Jewish life in the 21st century, right? Or what it means to be a Jew, maybe at any point in time, is that we're always schlepping the past with us and honoring it and having it live through us and be alive. but we're also always living in the present and responding to what's around us. And so that's why that interests me.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, that's part of my approach musically and personally all the way through is I can't ignore the time in which I've lived. I can't go back and make believe that play some museum piece, and I'm not. I don't know what I don't right now recall what the term is for that, but it's a matter of basically frozen in amber. That's not interesting. I mean, it's not interesting at all.
Right.
Well, I guess it is. I mean, even so, if you're playing classical music, stuff that was written hundreds of years ago, you still have to put what your playing has to reflect what your ears have heard along the way. It's not like you can make believe that you didn't hear the Leave It to Beaver theme song when you were a kid, or even better, we went and saw Richard Thompson this week over at Revolution Hall. I'd never heard him before, and so came back and I start looking through YouTube. What am I going to find? What did he play tonight? And also I stumbled on a clip of him singing and playing Britney Spears. Oops, I did it again.
Isn't that interesting?
I think these are the times you're living in. These are the influences that you've taken in by osmosis wherever you are and whatever you've done.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I've taken in from traveling, from going to other countries, from immersing myself in, whether it's Romanian or Hungarian music, because I've listened to that stuff a lot and I've played some of it, and again, the blues music that I've listened to, it leaks out my fingers, whether I do it well or not. It certainly leaks out my voice, whether, you talk about somebody coming back from the 1930s, Robert Johnson would kick my tuchus. He would, how dare I? On the other hand, I've sung a Yiddish version of Sweet Home Chicago, which I sang at his grave in Mississippi when we were there 15 years ago.
Oh,
so
great.
I figured, I'm sorry you have to lie there. Let me at least serenade you. But again, these are the influences that we've had, during this blessed time we've had to be alive. It's not, it's not a museum piece. I'm not living in 19th or 20th century Poland, nor would I want to.
I love
nor
that.
would I want to. I'm, to that degree, yes, I'm very much an American, and I'm very much culturally influenced by all the stuff I've heard, the good and the bad, and the ugly, too. Yes.
I love that. Yeah. By the way, Richard Thompson, one of the greatest guitarists that I've ever heard in my life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We make the case, Jewishly and musically, that change is the only constant. And so with regard to Robert Johnson, I think musicians have never really been interested in boundaries and things not changing, because I learned this past year that Robert Johnson was a huge fan of Jimmy Rogers, who is the father of all country music. And that's really what he loved, apparently. But I was going to say, and I guess I want to get your reaction to this regarding klezmer music. And I think one could make the same argument about Judaism as a religious tradition. Klezmer has probably always been about change, and I'm sure the pace of change has always been different and is more radical now, and the things in response to which it is changing is certainly quite different. I don't want to put my head in the sand, but the people who played klezmer were playing a music that hadn't existed 500 years before that. And so it seems to me that change is built into it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's commercial music, it's wedding music. You played because somebody was paying you to do it, whether you were being paid by the tune or whether you were being paid for a particular occasion. Your patron, it's like, Bach writing music for the king, what have you,
Right.
that you've got a patron, whether the patron is somebody whose kid is getting bar mitzvah, or whether the patron is, the wedding of some grand rabbi of a Hasidic dynasty. There's somebody who's throwing the money at the musicians, and the needs reflect the times in which people are living. So, for example, I remember going up to Richland in 1996 with several friends here, or 98, whatever year it was, and playing for a bar mitzvah celebration, the Macarena. And because the drummer and the pianist, they bailed out on it. So it was Andrew Ehrlich on fiddle and me on clarinet playing Macarena, because there were only two of us who were willing to embarrass ourselves at that level. So, I mean, you play basically what the event calls for. And that's part of it. The klezmer as a performance art, something, where people buy tickets to hear this as passive listeners rather than as dance participants. That's what's new. That's
Yes.
what's new since the 1970s revival, that it's an auditorium kind of event rather than a simcha event.
Right.
That, klezmer as simcha music, well, you'll hear some really distasteful, crass stuff, certainly among Orthodox Hasidic audiences at simchas these days. I mean, who was it? The Piamenta brothers or something that did that song, "The Land Down Under" by who was that?
Oh,
Men
yeah,
Without Hats?
Men at Work.
Men at Work, right. And so what they've got is Asher Bora. It's now a wedding tune called Asher Bora, and has become
Wow.
a kind of mainstream wedding music.
So Yankl, it's been a real pleasure. And before I close with my two final questions, I want to just ask, what is your band up to? Where can folks hear it? And have you guys ever recorded anything that people could listen to?
Well, what's coming up for the band is, let's see, we're playing a house concert in Southeast Portland, Abby Weisenblum's house concert series on June 7th. And then from there, we've got some summer shows. We're playing a Gresham Wednesday night thing at a place called, it's at 196th and Gleason, but I don't remember the name of the park. It's a nature park.
Okay.
And we're also playing at the Jewish festival, the big Jewish festival at Zidell Yards on August 30th.
Oh, wonderful. And are you part of the Portland Jewish Music Festival?
The band is not, but I'll be playing with Christina Crowder there's a klezmer dance night. So I'll be joining Christina for that. And then the following weekend, she and I and Jimmy Austin, who's a trombonist from Seattle, and Jai Tanzer, our drummer, we're going to be playing out in Bend on May 17th. So anybody who's listening to this from Deschutes County will be in Bend on the 17th of May.
And by the way, we will include in the show notes anything, information about the band or dates if you like, so people can also check that out. It's been a total pleasure, and I just want to ask you these two final questions. What's one thing you want to share with people, something you love that you want people to know about?
Something I love musically or otherwise?
Anything at all.
It's the note from Jackie Robinson's tombstone, which is something that I keep with me, is that life is, I don't remember, I've got to paraphrase it, but the only meaning of a life is its effect on other people.
Beautiful.
And that's something that I keep in my heart, even if I can't remember the sequence of the words that are on the stone.
Yeah, that's the measure of a life. Beautiful. And then Yankl Falk, what is the best Jewish food?
Since I've gone vegetarian, there's a lot of Jewish food that I can't imagine eating anymore. I'm not vegetarian, pescatarian, but I've been introduced to Sephardic food more recently. And there are these crackers. I don't even remember what they're called. They're biscochos, really sweet little crackers with sesame seeds on them.
Delicious. Wait, why? Okay. Yankl Falk, total pleasure, and Portland is lucky to have you doing your thing, and my love to you guys and to Rena and to the band as well, and I look forward to seeing you.
Likewise, thanks so much.
All right, take care.
Take care, you too. See you soon, I hope.
I hope.